It's 6:30 a.m. in the morning and the kids are supposed to be sleeping. Also, Ali went for a run. When she's back, she's gonna be like, where is my kid?
Where is he?
Hey everyone, Mark Giovanni here. What do you think about this intro? Do you like it?
Yeah.
Today we're talking about...
I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Today we're talking about mixing, but not this type of mixing. We're talking about this type of mixing. Alright, so here's the problem with mixing. There's a limited space. Imagine we've got a room like this, and we are trying to position sounds, different sounds in this room. There are 3 spaces. We can position things left to right, higher or lower in register, or we can have them closer or farther away. The problem though is that no matter where we position these sounds in this imaginary space, it takes space, and at some point there's too much going on and we start not hearing some of the sounds that stay behind, masked by some bigger sounds or louder sounds or sounds that take more space. Make sense?
Yes. Can I see the papa?
Do you like it?
Yeah.
So we are mixing, we are placing sounds, so left to right is panning, the higher the lower instruments is the arrangement. There are some instruments, the piccolo is higher and the double basses are lower in that area. And then depth usually is closer, less reverb or drier sounds, closer miking techniques, and farther away is just farther away, more reverb, farther miking techniques, etc. So the number one question when I'm either teaching mixing or showing a mix to someone else is, what plugins should I get? What plugins did you use for blah blah blah? And that is the last thing that you should be thinking about, really. The most important things when you are mixing doesn't even require you buying any plugins. The most important things are the ones that deal with managing space.
Space!
That space that we were talking about earlier. So the first most important thing when you are mixing is balance. We're not gonna talk about balance, the volume, how loud is an instrument compared to another one. That's the most important thing. If your mix is great but the balance is wrong, then it's gonna sound either fake or non-realistic, or just the mix is not gonna be appropriate when it comes to balance. That's the most important thing. How's that coming along? Oh, we're making progress. See, this is a very unorganized mix. This is what happens when you don't pay attention to the 2 most important things, which is balance and panning. And you start thinking first about what reverb should I use, what EQ should I use. That comes later. And if you ever have doubts of what is more important, again, think about the things that have a bigger effect when it comes to space management. Number 1, volume. If you've got something that sounds very loud, it's gonna take a lot of space. If you've got something that sounds very soft, it's gonna take less space in the mix. Second, the most important, EQ? No, EQ, you're gonna cut some frequencies maybe, but that's just a range of frequencies or a small range of frequencies. Think about panning first. If you've got an instrument that's open and wide, it's gonna take the entire space left to right. If you are panning and let's say you close the left side by 50%, something like this, that is a big deal when it comes to space management, or let's say compared to EQing where you've got 100 cycles and you bring it down 3 dBs. That is very efficient, but it's very subtle compared to balance, volume, and second, panning. So that's it, end of the story. You've got to believe me, that's the way it is, that's the way it works. I'll see you tomorrow, bye. I'm just kidding. Let's see a couple of examples.
Are you being funny?
All right, so I'm working on this piece. I'm mixing it. I composed it a couple of weeks ago. There's a video, me showing how I was composing it. I'll link it down below. But it's work in progress. I figured I would show a few things before I continue. At this point, I've mixed the strings, this part here. It sounds like this. Alright, so quick concept here before we move on. When we are panning, what we are doing is moving a sound source or positioning it a little bit more to the right, a little bit more to the left. But that is if that sound source is a mono signal. But we are dealing here with stereo channels. And a stereo channel is a combination of two mono channels. It's two channels actually. So depending on the sequencer that you are using, you may see that stereo channel that looks like just one channel, but it's actually two mono channels. And you're gonna see in the middle of that channel a knob that you can turn and you can pan things, but you're not actually panning. That is not a stereo panning, that is a stereo balance. So quick class in difference between stereo panning and stereo balance. In some sequencers or DAWs, for whatever reason, when you're dealing with an stereo channel, you just have one pan knob. This is not real stereo panning, this is a stereo balance. So as we said, an stereo channel is a combination of two channels. If this is playing at full volume and the pan knob is, or the balance knob is here in the center, then we're gonna have the same volume in both channels. That is what we are going to have. Now, if we move this knob a little bit to the left, let's say, like this, what we are doing actually is we're not positioning the sound. We are balancing the volume of these two mono channels. We're gonna be bringing down the volume of this channel like this. The volume of this channel is gonna be louder, the volume of this channel is softer, so it appears like we've moved the instrument, but basically what we've done is we brought down the volume of this mono channel. So essentially we haven't repositioned it. We lost the information of one side of this stereo channel. Hola.
¡Qué susto me he pegado! Me he pegado un susto, no sabía dónde estabas. Cariño.
¿Te has pegado un susto, mamá?
Mucho.
Did you get scared, mamá? Where's my kid, kind of thing?
Oh, mira aquí.
I told them this would happen.
Holy.
And this has happened. All right, so let's continue. It's funny, but it's almost 8. So this video, it's gonna be like 8 minutes, but to me, with Mark here, it's taking me more like 2 hours. And just to conclude this, if we do this the other way around, then basically the other way around, we're gonna bring down the volume of this one and we're gonna have full volume in this channel, just a little bit here. If we go 100%, basically there's no volume here and 100% volume here. That's the way it works. But we do not want that, don't we? What we want is to position the instrument and to be able to control those two channels. And a stereo channel is a combination of two mono channels, and we wanna be able to position the position of each one of those mono channels, right? We want to have control over that. So if a stereo channel is a combination of two mono channels and each mono channel generally has a pan knob, then it would make sense that the stereo channel would have two pan knobs like this. One of them is 100% open to the left and the other one is 100% open to the right by default. And then we can tweak them and we can start positioning each one of these mono channels. This is what you get by default on Pro Tools. But then we've got other sequencers like Cubase or Logic that instead of an stereo panning, we've got the stereo balance. Not cool. So this is one option. I like that. Another option could be this. A channel strip where you have this graphic and you can position each side. You can make it wider, narrower, and then you can move it like this. BE Pro does it like this. This is BE Pro. I like it very much. I can grab the right side and I can move it a little bit to the left. I can grab the left side, I can move it a little bit to the right. Now this sound is a little bit narrower. Now I can reposition it a little bit more to the left or a little bit more to the right. I could do things like, for example, take the right channel and move it all the way to the left. And now the right side is on the left and the left side is still on the left, but more center. I can do things like this. Why would I do that? I don't know. There are many reasons why I could do this, but those be specific reasons depending on the mix. But I want to have the ability to do that. And for sure, I cannot do that with one knob. That's basically doing stereo balance. End of the class. All right, back in Cubase. This is how in Cubase you go from a stereo balance to stereo panner. In your mixer, you're gonna click here and you're gonna go from a stereo balance to a stereo combined panner. Stereo balance, the typical thingy that you can move left or right, is the exact same thing as a knob, but that doesn't give me control. That basically just changes the volume of the left and the right channel. But if you click here and go to stereo combined panner, now I have control over the left side and I can bring it all the way to the right or keep it like 50% left, or I can take this right side and move it wherever I want. I could even bring it all the way to the left, and now we flipped panning. And once I decided how wide or narrow I want this sound, I can reposition it like this. And that gives me way more control than just stereo balance, don't you think?
It's completely under my control.
So let's see a couple of examples. So the question in the comments is going to be, but my libraries already come pre-panned, meaning the violins were already recorded in the right position with the miking and everything. I love that patch, it already sounds a little bit to the left. Yes, it does. But still, you want to control the space when you are mixing an orchestral mockup. The quick explanation why you want to do it is because stacking. When we are composing or mixing or arranging an orchestral mockup, we've got stacking problems. When you record an orchestra, you either do 2 or 3 passes or you record the entire orchestra at the same time. That's one time, one group of musicians, one set of mics, one room, with all the good things of that and also the inherent problems of that setup, the room response, the mic noise. And so when we are composing an orchestral mockup, it is the same setup, the same group of mics, the same room. It's just that we've got, instead of one recording or 3 passes of that orchestra, we're gonna have 30 or 40 or 60 layers of the same kind of thing, the same big room with the same set of mics, and we're stacking that. And when we've got 2 or 3, no problem, but we've got multiple of them, we're gonna have some stacking. Basically, a mockup is always gonna sound thicker than an orchestra, because even though we've got the different sections, it's in the same room and the same everything, and we're stacking that and that. It just takes more space. A mockup takes more sonic space than an orchestral recording. So we have to cut things a little bit more than if we just recorded an orchestra. Hopefully that makes sense. Let's continue. I swear I'm trying to get to the point quickly here, but there are a few things that I need to explain before I can show you the examples.
3 hours later.
If we didn't pan, it would still sound good. Because again, these libraries, these patches already sound, the violins already sound to the left where they should sound, etc. So already sounds good. Now we can perfect this sound a little bit, and we can prevent for each one of these tracks to take too much space, because at the end we're gonna have lots of tracks to mix. And panning, it's gonna be a way for us to decide for each one of the tracks to take a little bit of a space, and when it takes a little bit of a space, subtle, but a little bit less of a space, we are gaining a space for other tracks to be here in that spot, meaning we're gonna gain clarity. We're gonna have more definition, and we're gonna hear more instruments. It's not gonna sound as muddy and dark. We're gonna be able to hear each one of the instruments, and that is something that we want. But don't go crazy with this concept if you just discovered it.
Easy boy.
It has to be very subtle. All right, let's take a look at the example. These are just the strings without panning, and then I'm gonna activate the panning. Without, with, without, with. At this point you may be thinking, I don't hear the difference. That's because mixing is subtle changes, especially orchestral music, but I'm gonna play it back and I'm gonna switch back and forth without stopping the playback. What you're gonna hear, try and focus with the high string sound more towards the left and the low string sound more towards the right. First, try to identify that. Then when you see me bypassing the panning, what you're gonna see is that all of a sudden, the clarity that you had with those high strings positioned a little bit more to the left, they're gonna still sound to the left, but there's gonna be some spill, some bleeding a little bit more to the right side. And it's fine, it's fine. But if we control, and you see it's just that 20%, if we control that a little bit, if we close that space a little bit, that spill of the high strings going to the right side, we're gonna be able to control it, to cut it a little bit, and then the cellos and the double basses that are naturally sounding in that right side, they're gonna cut through the mix a little bit better. We're gonna be able to hear them more clearly. So try and identify that when I bypass and activate the pannings. So this is active, this is bypassed, active, bypassed. I'm gonna start active. Section here, start active. It's very subtle but meaningful. We have to keep it subtle because at the end of the day it's an orchestral instrument and we want to keep it sounding natural. If we've got synths and percussion, we can be a little bit more aggressive there. But for sections like strings, brass, we gotta be subtle. I'm gonna exaggerate it now a little bit so you can hear a more obvious difference. Here we go. So these are the highest strings, kind of like violins, violas. So I'm gonna bring them way more to the left. And these are low strings, so cellos and double bass. I'm gonna bring them way to the right. So now you are going to hear a bigger, more obvious difference. Here we go. This is active. And even more exaggerated. You don't want to do this. You don't want to do this because we are losing the space. But so you can hear a more exaggerated difference. This is the effect that you get. The last time was super obvious. Too obvious. It was making it not sound realistic. At the end of the day, we want this to sound like a real orchestra, obviously. And if we go that aggressive, then we lose all that spatial component so important for orchestral music. I'm gonna also mention that this is way more obvious with headphones than speakers. It's also more obvious when you're playing it back very loud than when it's soft. So try both speakers and headphones because sometimes with the speakers you're gonna be too much and with headphones sometimes you're gonna be too little. You're gonna make the adjustment with headphones, then you're gonna listen it back with the speakers and you're like, I don't hear the difference. That's because with the speakers, the way that sound travels is way more complex than headphones. Headphones is like from here to your ear directly. From speakers there are many things. First there's the reflections and then there's the sound that travels through your head to the other ear. So the changes in panning are gonna be it's more subtle. That is why it's super important if you are mixing with headphones. The biggest difference of mixing with headphones and the speakers is when adjusting reverbs and when panning. That's the biggest difference. For EQ and other things, it's not that big of a deal, but you have to understand how differently you have to mix or assess your tweaks and changes when you are mixing with headphones or speakers, especially with reverbs and panning. We're gonna try one last thing before the end of this video, which is we're gonna listen to the entire mix. It's not mixed, but all the tracks playing at the same time. And then the only things that are actually panned are the strings, and we're gonna activate and deactivate the panning to see when it is not active. The strings, you can definitely hear the strings, but they're kind of like buried behind the big percussion and the brass, etc. But when we make a little bit narrower regarding the space they take, we can hear them a little bit more, and we haven't changed the volume, we've just made them a little bit narrower. So we are going to start not active and then we're gonna activate it. And what you're gonna hear is that at the beginning everything sounds fine because it's a mock-up that I did and it sounds good. It's a good mock-up.
Congratulations.
But then when I activate those pannings, then all of a sudden, boom, the high strings will go way more to the left and the low strings will go way more to the right. The first time it's gonna be way more exaggerated and the second time is gonna be the right way of doing it. But all of a sudden you're gonna be able to identify those sounds easier, and that's good. Let's do it. This is the exaggerated first time, and then we're gonna do it the right way. So not active. We've got those big horns coming in, that takes a lot of space. So if on top of that we've got something that's the strings that also take a lot of space, clearly it's either one or the other, right? The horns are taking a lot of space and it's a melodic element, so it's the most important element. We're gonna hear the horns. But what we can do though with the strings, we can find a smaller space in the mix where we can position them so they cut through the mix through that space. Now we're gonna do it the right way, and this guy should be more like this, and the cello should be more like this. We're gonna start not active first. gonna finish the video reading some comments of the last video that I posted that was a review of the Abbey Road 1 Grand Brass. So Etienne de la Noise, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly. Thanks for commenting though. He says, man, I was scared for the mug at the intro. Yeah, it was, me too. I was like, boom, it's like, oh my God. But it turned out well. But yeah, maybe it was a little bit too much. Then we've got, I do not know how to pronounce this for sure. Horns are members of the brass family. Yeah, I think that that was because I said something along the lines of, the library is called Grand Brass, but it's actually not brass, it's horns. And a few people commented, horns are brass. And yes, I know horns are brass, but when I see a brass library, I imagine a brass library where you've got trumpets and trombones and tuba and horns as well. If it's a horns library, then it should say horns, but at the same time, it also includes cellos, so yeah, I get the point of Grand Brass. I tried to do the video as in depth as possible, but I also wanted to keep in there the first reaction, so literally that was the first time that I was trying that library. I wanted to go as in depth, but also show you like the true first reactions. So that's how it turned out. Joel Tower says, do you still have to read the numbers of your card? Rookie. Yeah. Rookie, I'm sorry. We are so used to Amazon, right? Just one click and your card is in there, and that same day or the next day it's at your door. And it's like when you have to actually input the card, it almost annoys me. It's like, I have to input my card number here. Just make it easier for me and I'll buy more stuff from you. Anyway, Still Neo says you can create multis with contact and non-contact libraries using Unify. Exactly, yes, 100%, thanks for pointing that out. Linda here says, as a woman watching this, yes, bringing your son down to be with you was the right thing to do. Yeah, right, exactly. Wendy Kessel, hey Wendy, thanks for commenting. Thanks for doing these very informative daily videos. I look forward to my daily mark fix. I said we're gonna do videos like these every single day, and I was super excited, and I'm very excited, but it takes a lot of work. I didn't plan on that, but we'll keep going. Daniel here, I bet the dropping of the phone wasn't planned. Yeah, it wasn't planned. Alright, that's it. This video is long enough. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.